Turn 1 Soul Ring.
Nice.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's a good thing that because you guys sound way worse than you normally do because we're doing this on headphones, but it's good that I have to keep reminding myself that this isn't what the end result is going to sound like. It's going to sound nice and crispy like it always does.
Yeah, you're telling me, Kevin. You sound like you're in a toaster.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Oh, okay. So, before we start the show today, do you guys want to talk about Secret Lair?
No.
No, okay, great.
I'm fine. Yeah.
No, I kid. But we are going to start the show. This is Turn 1 Soul Ring. Welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm Kevin.
Hey, I'm Eric.
And I'm Riley.
And today on the show, we are going to be dexplaining Eric's Newnath Lands of Creation Commander deck. And that's just a fun title that Eric gave it. It is an Omnath Locus of Creation deck, the new Omnath that is the darling of Standard right now.
Everybody's favorite elemental.
Yep.
But before we get to that, Eric, how can listeners get in touch with us?
Alrighty, so you can find us over on Instagram at Turn 1 Soul Ring, the podcast. You can always send us messages directly via email, Turn 1 Soul Ring, the podcast at gmail.com. And we also put all of our stuff over on YouTube. So over on there, type out Turn 1 Soul Ring, the podcast to find us the easiest.
That's the easy way, folks. It's long, but it's easy. Trust me.
Yeah.
Like we usually do on these deck tech episodes, before we get to the deck list, I know I just said we were going to get to it, but before we do that, I have gotten a bit of backstory on the commander of this deck, which is the legendary elemental Omnath. And I'll just read Omnath, Locus of Creation. If you haven't heard of him, he is red, green, white, and blue for a 4/4 legendary elemental. When he enters the battlefield, it's not a he, you draw a card. So he replaces himself. That's great. And he has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 4 life. If this is the first time this ability is resolved this turn, if it's the second time, you add its casting cost to your mana pool. And if it's the third time, it deals 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker you don't control. So
He's hitting the whole board.
yeah, he's
Of people.
Get wrecked.
he's pretty good. Four mana 4/4 that replaces himself. What else do you want?
He's got 4 arms. He can punch 3 people in the face at the same time.
And even like technically in Commander, because he's in your command zone, it's like card advantage.
Well, is it card advantage? I mean, doesn't everybody have the same card advantage, or because he replaces himself, he's card advantage?
Because he's also drawing you a card.
Yeah, that's true.
So instead of saying like he replaces himself, he's not in your hand to replace himself with. So
I honestly don't know why he needs to draw you a card when he enters the battlefield.
because he costs 4 different colors, Riley.
Why does every threat in Standard? Well, I know we're talking about EDH here, but why does every threat in Standard need to draw a card to replace itself whenever it enters the battlefield?
Because they don't want players to have feel bads if it gets removed right away.
You know what feels bad? when you deal with a threat and you're still down on card advantage.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, like we have all these crazy threats that draw us cards, but the removal does not do the same thing.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for Doomblade draw card.
Why not?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of content creators have been saying. Like they print these huge threats, but then the removal doesn't follow the same power creep as the threats, and that's obviously true. Whew. Okay, so the Omnath's backstory here. Omnath, also known as the Flickering Heart, was a manifestation of the wild and chaotic mana of Zendikar. It was a being of pure mana that was capable of wreaking massive destruction. Wreaking? Omnath started out as a pure green creature, but acquired other colors of mana one by one, incorporating red, blue, and white in that order. So we get the Omnaths that we've seen up to this one. And that's also how we got to this standard meta and this card that we've been talking about for the last 5 minutes. But anyways, despite the uncertainty of Omnath's actual existence being a representation of a plane's mana, it's kind of a it's kind of a like precarious existence. I guess kind of like a ghost. I'm not sure, but there was actually a real site on a high mesa of Ondu that was dubbed the prison of Omnath. The site was safeguarded by a binding circle of strange globular swamp growths, stone hedrons, and animal bones. The circle created an eerie sensation in those who approached it, deterring them from approaching the circle's center, where a huge pit led deep into the ground. Those who got too close died to the destructive surge of power that lashed out of the circle. So don't go near those animal bones.
All right.
Religious pilgrims from across Zendikar also traveled to the prison of Omnath on a twice-yearly basis to perform the Ritual of Lights, a ceremony designed to protect the world from the release of Omnath. So it's kind of a bad thing. During the events leading up to the Eldrazi's awakening, the ritual was disrupted and Omnath was set loose, and like a human body fighting a disease, Omnath began to adapt to deal with the Eldrazi threat. It absorbed more and more mana, embodying not just the might of the forests and jungles, but the fury of the mountains and the unrelenting seas and the life-giving plains of Zendikar. So very, very flavorful there. That's how we got all that mana in his casting cost. After the Eldrazi no longer posed a threat to Zendikar, Omnath had nothing to fight, but he still kept absorbing mana and growing. It's unknown if or what Omnath's goals are, and if it is truly the embodiment of Zendikar, what the goals of the plane are. But it's kind of cool because I don't know that I didn't know any of this about Omnath before, but he's kind of one of those neutral characters. You know, he's not good or bad. He's sort of like if you ever seen like Nazca of the Valley of the Wind, where they figure out the Earth is growing the toxic jungle to get rid of the things that are polluting the Earth, like humans. So, you know, it's like, is it good or bad? I mean, it's bad for us, but you know, it's not really evil. It's just sort of an interesting take on a character. But anyways,
Yeah, just don't mess with his shit, you know.
Not really.
Yeah.
No, just be good to nature if you can.
Yeah.
And I do like throughout the story, like we do see with the cards, it's cool how he was green and then green red and then it added blue and then it added white. Here we have with the Locusts of Creation, like that with going along with the story is actually pretty cool.
Yeah. Now he just needs he probably won't get black. That's the evil color.
Well, it's not evil. It's just misunderstood.
Oh, right. Yeah. Go back and listen to our Color Pie series Black to find out more about that. That reminds me, I don't think we ever finished that series. But anyways, let's move on to the deck. And like we always do, there's going to be a link to this in the show notes. So if you want to follow along with us while we go through the deck categories, you can do that. But first off, Eric, what is the goal of this deck? What are you trying to do here?
I'll give a little story to that as well. I was trying to think of something to build, and we've had some interesting enchantments pop up recently, and then I was thinking like, hey, with the new set, we've kind of had a lot of cool landfall, create some token kind of things, and also some pop up in recent like commander decks and stuff. And then because Omnath is green and white, we also get cards. We also get the other card that doubles tokens, which is Anointed Procession, on top of the other green ones that actually do that. So now I could put all cards that can double tokens, and I was like, let's just go for a crazy, wacky token strategy. And then because some other things do +1/+1 counters as well, it's like, let's try and put all of that together into a deck and see if we can make it work. It was quite difficult. I cut a lot of stuff. But we kind of have a list here that seems like it can do some pretty fun things if all goes well. So,
yeah, you got to get that engine going, but the pieces are there to do it. Definitely.
Yeah, there's also some really fun like cards that you probably may not have even heard of. So I hope people find those interesting as well.
Yeah, there are some I do want to spotlight because there's some that I'm like, ooh, I think I'm gonna put that in this deck. Anyways, let's start off with the deck categories. First up here we have Mana Ramp. So we have Farseek, Harrow, Hour of Promise, Migration Path, Spoils of Victory, and Wood Elves. Spoils of Victory is a card you don't see too often. It's really good in this deck. It's 2 and a green for a sorcery. Search your library for a plains, island, swamp, mountain, or forest card and put that card onto the battlefield. Then shuffle your library. So it doesn't even come in tapped, and it is a nice little redundancy for Farseek. I mean, obviously they're not the same card, but they do, they're ideal in this deck because you're going to want to be able to get those dual lands, so you can get the all 4 colors of Omnath's casting cost as quickly as possible.
Yeah, like obviously since Omnath, this whole deck is 4 colors, it's kind of color hungry, so being able to grab the cards that we need, being Farseek, Spoils, Wood Elves, they can all find like those dual lands because they don't look for a basic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then Our Promise is also really cool because it's any 2 land cards.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good one, especially if you want to go get utility lands, just in the format in general. There is another card. I think it's an instant. Is it natural? I think it's Natural Connections. 2 and a green, and you can go get one of a basic land. So you can't get duals, but it puts it onto the battlefield. I do believe it is tapped, but you do have a lot of basic lands in here, so I don't know if that would be... I guess I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, because we were just...
save for the end, Kev.
Whoa. Okay, so the next category we have here is Falling Lands, and it's if you're following along, it's danger in parenthesis, so just watch out. We have Avenger of Zendikar, Emeria Shepherd, Fearless Fledgling, Oren Reef Hydra, Pylath World Sculptor, Royal Elemental, Spitfire Lagak, Tatiova Benthic Druid, Tunneling Geopede, and Undergrowth Champion. So you have there's like 2 cards in here that I noticed. The Spitfire and the Tunneling Geopede is like, these are just to get a little bit of extra damage into your opponents, and like, because like, I guess if you had both these on the battlefield and Omnath, of course every time a land drops these are going to trigger, but when on Omnath's 3rd trigger you're doing 6 damage, like that could really start to add up. That's like more than an 1/8 of your life total, right?
Yeah, like they're just doing what Omnath can do at his 3rd stage. And so technically if you had both those and Omnath out and you play 3 lands, that's 10 damage to each opponent in one turn just by dropping 3 lands.
Yeah, those are just there's interesting cards that I didn't expect to see in this deck.
I love the callback to Emeria Shepherd. This is definitely one of the cards that I
cut from the...
Well, like I always want to play it, but it's also 7 mana, so
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I think this card, like, obviously it's expensive, but this whole deck is kind of going that way. I was like, let's throw this card in there.
Yeah.
And just so everybody's on the same page, the average CMC of this deck is 4.27, so it's up there.
Yeah, it's pretty thick.
And then obviously like Tatiova, it doesn't say landfall, but it is whenever a land enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life and draw a card.
Oh yeah, she's fantastic. She's also a great commander if you ever want to build a Tatiova deck.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
And there was another card here. Oh yeah, Royal Elemental. This is a card you really don't see too often. It's 3 blue for a 3/2 elemental with flying. Its landfall trigger is when a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may gain control of target creature for as long as you control Royal Elemental. So a little bit of removal in a way, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's definitely very blue in the way that it steals creatures.
Yeah.
Yeah,
these Omnath decks, they're really just allowing you to just play almost any landfall card you want. It's pretty great.
Yeah, and then we do have like Undergrowth Champion, Oran Reef Hydra, and Fearless Fledgling. All of those creatures just get bigger as you play lands.
Yeah, Fearless Fledgling. That thing definitely in limited. It pulls its weight.
Right? It totally does.
Yeah, I've had some aggressive starts with a couple Fearless Fledglings in my deck, and next thing you know, you've got like a 3/3 or a 4/4 flyer swinging in at your opponent.
Yeah,
It's pretty scary.
and we needed some cheaper stuff in here.
Yeah, you had to bring down that curve a little bit.
Yeah. But unlike a lot of the other like newer landfall ones where it's just like plus whatever till end of turn, Fearless Fledgling is great because it does get the counters on it. So
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, get huge, as the bodybuilders say. The next category we have here is lands make tokens. We have Emeria Angel, Felidar Retreat, Nesting Dragon, Omnath Locus of Rage, Rampaging Baloths, Retreat to Emeria, and Scoot Swarm. Riley, it must have felt good to see Felidar Guardian in this deck. So you're not getting
Felidar Retreat?
Felidar Retreat, yes.
Retreat.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it is alongside Retreat to Emeria, which gives me mixed feelings, but I get it.
Yeah.
I basically have, I'm pretty sure these are all the cards that just like make tokens with landfall.
I think there's there's a green card that makes 2/2 elementals on landfall.
Zendikar's Royal.
Yeah.
It's an enchantment.
It's like
I missed one.
It's
3 green.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like kind of pricey because you get a 2/2 with every landfall trigger.
Yeah. So I'd probably take that over Retreat to Emeria, but I don't know. It's kind of hard. Kind of hard to say.
I would just throw it in instead of something else. I just wanted everything that can make a token from a land falling. That's the point of the deck. This is where everything kind of starts. So
yeah,
makes sense.
It's really nice to see Nesting Dragon in here. It's actually one of the cards from Commander 2018 that has gained a fair bit of value, and those eggs will also come in handy.
Yeah, it's a fun card.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just remember you playing that a lot there, Kev.
Yeah, it pulled its weight.
Yeah, and what was that? Lord Windgrace. Yeah, I don't have that deck together anymore. It was just, I guess I just got sick of it.
Yeah, you had your time in the sun, just torment of hailfiring everybody.
Yeah, or exsanguinate. Yeah, it was too much of a good thing. Yeah. So next up, we have token generation. We have Brutaclad, Telcor Engineer, Divine Visitation, Helm of the Host, Michaeloth, Rite of Replication, Rith the Awakener, Seki Season's Guide, Tendershoot Dryad, Titania, Protector of Argoth, and Zyrus the Writhing Storm. This is a lot of goodies in this category.
Oh man, I love Tendershoot Dryad. That card is a house.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because it's each upkeep. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token.
Man, I haven't seen Rith the Awakener in a deck in a while.
So yeah, Rith the Awakener is 3 of anything, a red, a green, and a white for a 6/6 dragon, which is also legendary. It's got flying, and then whenever Rith deals damage to a player, you can pay 2 and a green. If you do, choose a color, then create a 1/1 green sapling creature token for each permanent of that color.
Yeah, just straight up each permanent on the battlefield.
Yeah. So whatever color's the most of, just pick that color, and then you're getting a bunch of 1/1 green saplings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with like divine visitation, well, even if you just have one angel with Brutaclad, you can turn all your little saplings into 4/4 angels at the beginning of combat.
The nice thing about Brutaclad is if you have divine visitation on the battlefield, Brutaclad will try to make a 2/1 mirror at the beginning of combat, but it will make an angel instead, and then you get to choose what your tokens become a copy of. So even if you don't have that angels kicking around, you can just go ahead and make one.
Eric, what are you planning on, what's like an ideal situation for Helm of the Host to be equipped to?
I know the answer.
Well, why don't we just put it on the commander?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an option. I was also thinking Brutaclad because I've done that before, and that's fun.
Also, I remember when you did that with your Brutaclad deck.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah.
But yeah, Brutaclad's really fun here, and then obviously the biggest token we can just outright make minus Rite of Replication being in the deck is from the Locus of Rage ones. And then what's really spicy about that is once we have those 5/5s out there, if they're dying at all, since they are all that token, we can just ping stuff for 3 as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, get wrecked.
The other really interesting card in here, I think, is Seki Season's Guide. So this is 5 of anything and 3 green for a 0/0 legendary spirit. It enters the battlefield with 8+1/+1 counters on it. If damage would be dealt to Seki, prevent that damage, remove that many 1/1 counters from him, and create that many 1/1 spirit creature tokens. And then later, you can sacrifice 8 spirits and return Seki from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Just rinse and repeat.
So he just kind of keeps coming back.
Yeah, there's an interesting combo with Seki and Terror of the Peaks, because Terror of the Peaks makes it so that, you know, when a creature enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to its power to any target, and you can just target Seki with its own power, and then make 8 spirits, then sacrifice the 8 spirits to bring back Seki, and just rinse and repeat. And if you have like a infinite enter the battlefield trigger, then you just go ham.
Well, even with all of the 1/1s entering, I think that'll trigger. Or does Terror of the Peak say non-token?
It's any target. So basically, how it works is Seki will prevent the 8 damage that would be dealt to it, and then make 8 colorless spirit creature tokens, and then die because it's a 0/0. So then you just sacrifice the 8 spirit tokens to bring it back out from the graveyard, and just keep that cycle going.
But that just ends the game because the 8 1/1s that come out, you can just ping everybody with those, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you don't even need like a Perforos or anything like that. I guess you just Terror of the Peak somebody to death.
Those 2 cards. Last thing we do have, I really like this card, and it's some little political stuff. It's Zyrus the Writhing Storm for 2 of anything, a blue and a green and a red. It's a flying 3/5 Snake Leviathan. And whenever an opponent draws a card, except for the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, you make a green 1/1 snake creature token. And then whenever Zyrus, the Writhing Storm, deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each draw that many cards. So you're both going to draw 3 cards, which is beneficial for them, and then you're going to make at least 2 1/1s from that interaction.
Yeah, attack me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really fun commander. I've thought about building a deck around him. He's one of the secondary commanders in the Calamax deck.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to the next category here. We have double some stuff. We have Anointed Procession, Branching Evolution, Cathars Crusade, Doubling Season, Lithoform Engine, Parallel Lives, Primal Vigor, and that's it. I thought there was more. Cathars Crusade is just rough. We were playing a game of Commander, and I thought I had cleared Eric's board, but then he, what did you like? You got tokens somehow from the.
So you exiled my guys to make the 2/2 pigs,
right?
Or whatever they were.
Yes, they were. It was Curse of the Swine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they got huge because of Cathar's.
They got swole. They're like 5/5 pigs.
I was pretty choked at that point. Yeah. But it's a great card, and the point is it's a great card.
Yeah, and so I know it doesn't say double on it, so Cathars Crusade kind of doesn't just double stuff, but again, if we have Seki make 6 1/1s, then everything on the board gets 6 +1/+1 counters. Well, that's pretty insane.
Yeah, this is really going to help with your ability to just steamroll people with
if you like keeping track of how many counters go on your creatures, play Cathars Crusade. uh, Doubling Season, Parallel Lives, Anointed Procession, those are all great token doublers. But Primal Vigor is one that is pretty interesting because it actually impacts the entire board. It's not just your tokens that you make, it's everybody's. And unlike Doubling Season, it just affects +1/+1 counters, not all counters, but
Yeah.
definitely an interesting one if you're taking advantage of tokens and +1/+1 counters.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that card existed, and it's very close to Doubling Season.
Yeah.
But it's like, obviously, we're making so many tokens. I feel like we should still get the better advantage out of that.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I know we talked.
Yeah.
I know we talked about Lithoform Engine during our set review and the interaction with how tokens are created off of Lithoform Engine. But we should probably touch on it again. Basically, since you're able to, as one of its activated abilities, pay for and tap it to copy target permanent spell you control, you're targeting the spell on the stack. So if you have a creature on the stack that you're targeting with Lithoform Engine, the copy will come out as its own creature. It will be a token, but it's not actually being created from the battlefield. So Wizards has this weird way of explaining this new rules interaction where, if something's created on the battlefield, it can be doubled up by Anointed Procession or something like Doubling Season. But if it's coming in as its own permanent from the stack, it's not being created. So that term created is not used. So therefore, it doesn't get doubled up with Anointed Procession or Doubling Season. So a bit of an interesting interaction there.
Very interesting. Yeah. Riley coming in hot with the rules.
Yeah.
The cool things about Lithoform Engine is the way that you can use the activated or triggered ability. So we can copy the triggered ability, especially of Seki or Rith. And because that's just a lump sum of stuff we're making, we're going to get double that stuff as well.
Hey, and that's the name of no, it's double sum stuff. I almost said that's the name of the category. Ah, damn it.
I also, in hindsight, should have named this category Double Stuff Oreos, but
yeah, that's what it makes me think of. Definitely. Yeah.
So with Seki, like, isn't it just a replacement effect for the damage? I don't know if that would be a triggered ability.
Would be.
Oh, you know what?
But it does work with Riff because that's a triggered ability that you could copy.
But yeah, you're right. That's a replacement effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boom! You just got rules.
Judge.
Depends on the judge, yes.
Yeah.
It really does. It really does. So the next category we have here is play more lands. We have Ancient Greedwarden, Azusa, Lost but Seeking, Crucible of Worlds, Dryad of the Elysian Grove, Exploration, Oracle of Moldiah, Ramanap Excavator, and Wayward Swordtooth. So a couple of these cards don't really let you play extra lands, but what I like about these, like Crucible or Greenwarden or Ramanap Excavator, with an extra lands ability, you're going to be able, it's going to make it, and those cards being able to play lands from your graveyard, it's going to make it so much easier to get all of Omnath's landfall triggers in a single turn, and like it can get pretty disgusting. I did some goldfishing of this deck, and this category is pretty gross.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with a fetch in the graveyard. You can just start cycling through and get greasy.
Absolutely.
Plus, I mean, if you have Ancient Greedwarden on the battlefield, he's doubling up the enter the battlefield triggers that are coming from your lands. So landfall is triggered twice. Therefore, how would that interaction work with Omnath? Because
that's what I was thinking.
Oh man.
Oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah, because Omnath's landfall is whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 4 life. If it's the first time the ability has resolved, okay. If it's the second time, add the 4 colors. And if it's the third time, it deals 4 damage. So I guess after the third time, it's just not going to do anything. So
I guess like 1 land would get you 4 life and 4 mana.
Yeah.
Right? Because it'll trigger twice.
Right.
And then the second land would trigger twice. It would see the third time resolving. And then the fourth time resolving, it doesn't there's nothing to resolve.
Yeah.
Well, either
It's interesting.
way, it's yeah, exactly.
But all the other landfall triggers, like Avenger of Zendikar, Miria Shepherd, those are all being double triggered, and that's going to be gross.
Oh yeah,
Yep, and then all of the extra tokens again.
Yep.
and that Spitfire Lagak, I'll get you.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty simple. We have I think there's 5 creatures that are extra land drops and 3 cards that are card drops from the graveyard. So
Right, let's
Yeah.
move on to the next category here. It's Sacrifice Land. We have Copperleaf Angel, Excavation, Scape Shift, and Zurin Orb. I think this is definitely my favorite category. Well, these this like play more lands, Sacrifice Land, and then the next categories they all really synergize well together, but I just think a Copperleaf Angel is a card I'd never seen before. It's 5 mana for a 2/2 artifact creature angel with flying, and you can tap it to sacrifice X lands, then put X 1/1 counters on Copperleaf Angel. This is just a great way to be able to, let's say, you don't have a land drop in your hand and you have a way to play lands from your graveyard, to just sacrifice 1 land to play a land from your graveyard. Or if you have, Crucible on the field and Azusa and you want to play multiple lands, so you sacrifice those lands. But it's just a fantastic way to get lands in the graveyard.
The biggest downside I see with it, as fun and janky as it is definitely janky. It's 5 mana for a 2/2 that you have to wait a full turn cycle to start using.
Yes.
Pretty risky.
Yes, absolutely.
it's the riskier of the other 2 options that are obviously a lot better to go for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But Excavation seems great. I love that. I don't know if I've seen or played with Excavation before, but it's 1 and a blue for an enchantment, and it has an activated ability of pay 1, sacrifice a land to draw a card, and any player may activate this ability.
So again, when we're able to play lands from the graveyard, and if we can play extra lands, you're tap a land, sack that land that I just tapped, draw a card, play it again with Ramanap, and then tap it, sacrifice, draw a card, play it back out again.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
And then all while we're getting all these landfall triggers as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that other people can use it isn't really a big deal, because, you've built your deck in a way that you're going to be taking the most advantage of it, just like Primal Vigor. So it's not really... if anything, it's less likely that it's gonna get removed if people are using it late game when they're just trying to dig for an answer to deal with all of your tokens.
Yeah, it's if you guys want to sacrifice your lands, I'm fine with that.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
And lastly, Zurin Orb is just so fantastic in this deck. Zurin Orb is 0 mana for an artifact, and you can sacrifice a land to gain 2 life. So same thing. This is just going to let you, get lands in your graveyard, play them back, get landfall triggers, and all the while just be gaining 2 life each time you do it. It's just so much value.
Yeah, and Zurin Orb synergizes perfectly with the next section.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, Zurin Orb's the best one for the next section.
And that is Return Lands. We have Second Sunrise, Splendid Reclamation, The Mending of Dominaria, and World Shaper. So the best 2 here that are great for Zurin Orb, or Copperleaf Angel or Excavation, are the first 2, Second Sunrise and Splendid Reclamation, because they bring the lands back right away. Like Mending of Dominaria, it's a saga, so you have to wait, and World Shaper, it has to die. But you can really go nuts with Zurin Orb and then just play a Splendid Reclamation. Or a couple of cards in the next category, you can float some mana, cast one of them, and then play Splendid Reclamation and really make your opponent salty.
Oh yeah. Obviously Second Sunrise is each player, so this card is best used when we just sack all of our lands and then bring them right back. Some people may get a little bit of benefit off it, but I think we'll get the most.
Yeah. The nice thing about the nice thing about Mending of Dominaria or Second Sunrise over Splendid Reclamation is that Splendid Reclamation actually makes the cards or the lands cards from the battlefield or graveyard enter the battlefield tapped. Whereas Mending of Dominaria and Second Sunrise don't have that clause. So if you have like the third Saga trigger on the stack with Mending of Dominaria, you could sack all your lands with Zero and Orb, and then bring them all back right away with Mending of Dominaria, and then just have a fun turn.
Yeah, that would be a fun turn for the player. Yeah, everybody else
for the
would just be like tapping their watches. So let's move on to the next section here. It's game enders. It's not the last section, but it is game enders. We have Armageddon, Catastrophe, Craterhoof Behemoth, and Overwhelming Stampede. So Catastrophe is an older card. So if you've never heard of it, it's 4 and 2 white for sorcery. Destroy all lands or all creatures. Creatures destroyed this way can't be regenerated. This card is it's a little more expensive than Armageddon, and most of the time you're going to be using it for the lands, but you can find yourself in a situation where you're not doing great and you need to wipe the board of creatures. It is nice that it does have that modal aspect to it.
Especially since a lot of the enchantments or the theme of the deck is built around like landfall enchantments that generate tokens. Like, it's probably less of a risk for you to just wipe the board clean of creatures and then just start playing lands out again and rebuilding your board right off the bat.
Yeah, that's true.
I hadn't known about Catastrophe till a little bit ago, and I kind of just really like this card because it is all lands or all creatures. So if you have a deck that can benefit from destroying all lands, it's great that way. But it's always nice to just be able to do a board wipe as well if some people are getting too scary.
Yeah, I have one of these. I've had one of these in my Narset deck since I first built it, because you cast this for free once you got Narset on the board, and you're probably going to win that game.
Probably. So obviously with Craterhoof and Overwhelming Stampede, we have a bunch of tokens that we're making that should just end the game because they all get XX and Trample. But for like Armageddon and Catastrophe being a game ender, the best way obviously is for us to have like a Splendid Wreck or a Mending of Dominaria on the board, or in hand.
Yeah, respectively.
Yeah, we destroy all lands, get them all back. Obviously, it's a non-bow with Second Sunrise because it's each player, so that card doesn't work in this case.
Yeah, fair enough.
You're like, haha, I destroyed all your lands. I brought them all back.
You're welcome.
Unless you had a way to exile their graveyards as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the next category we have here, it's the smallest category in the deck. It's tutor time. We have Court of Calling and Enlightened Tutor. So you have a ton of targets for Court of Calling, and I guess you do have quite a few targets for Enlightened Tutor, but most of the time with all the tokens you can make, like, you're going to probably be casting Court of Calling for free.
Probably.
Hopefully.
And yeah, I tried with these two tutors, like basically throughout every category, we can usually get something that we need. That's why I do have for the sacrifice land, we have Copperleaf Angel. That is still a creature, so we can use Court of Calling to go and get the Copperleaf Angel to kind of turn that engine on.
Yeah, there you go. And then you avoid the casting costs, so any objections Riley had to putting this card in the deck just disappeared.
And Court of Calling is instant speed, so we can do it at end steps, so...
Exactly. And don't have to worry about summoning sickness.
And then, yeah, Enlightened Tutor... Again, like, the big thing is the sacrifice land part, I think, to really turn on playing more lands and getting more landfall triggers. Mm-hmm. And so we can also get the excavation or the Zyrus Orb from over there with Enlightened Tutor as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then obviously everything in the double stuff section, those are all enchantments, and Lithoform Engine is an artifact, so we're able to get all of those as well.
Lot of good targets. It's almost like you should have more tutors. I don't know.
It would be nice, I think.
Yeah, there's 100 cards really goes fast. You don't even notice
it. Really does.
Yeah. You're like, I want this one and this one and this one, and then you got to start making cuts. It's tough.
I want all these.
Next, not the last category, second to last, is non-basic lands. We have Breeding Pool, Cascading Cataracts, City of Brass, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, Field of the Dead, Flooded Strand, Forbidden Orchard, Hallowed Fountain, Lotus Field, Mana Confluence, Misty Rainforest, Reliquary Tower, Sacred Foundry, Stomping Ground, Temple Garden, Windswept Heath, and Wooded Foothills. Cascading Cataracts is an interesting one. It's indestructible. It taps for a colorless, or you can pay 5 and tap it to add 5 mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool. It's kind of like, what's that land from Odyssey? Crystal Quarry, maybe? It's that land is a little bit different, but because you just get wooberg, and it's not indestructible, but it's Eric, you have a lot of colored. This is a very color pip heavy deck. Is this in here to just kind of smooth things out?
Yeah, compared to the one you were talking about before that just gets you wooberg, Cascading Cataracts is really great because it's 5 mana in any combination that you want.
Right.
So it's like, if I don't have it out, if I need to cast Writh, I can be like, I need a red, a green, and a white,
Yeah. It's and it survives Armageddon if you're ever in a pinch.
Yeah, so we do have 2 lands that have indestructible. Wait, no, just one. Sorry. Lotus Field has hexproof.
Yeah. Nice try.
Nice try.
Judge.
And then there's, I was just thinking now that it probably would have been a good idea to put Fabled Passage in this deck.
Yeah, Fabled Passage or Prismatic Vista.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to grab basics. I was worried this was another thing where I was like, I want to make sure if we're using fetch lands, there's enough lands to fetch and stuff as well. But yeah, there's 4 fetch lands currently in the deck. Because those obviously really help with landfall triggers and stuff, especially if we can play them from the graveyard. It's a great engine to really get things going with landfall triggers.
Oh yeah, it gets very
easy. I'm honestly I would probably play not to skip ahead too far, but I'd probably play Fabled Passage over something like Forbidden Orchard, especially since you do have stuff like what's it called, Primal Vigor floating around. Every time you tap Forbidden Orchard, you'd be giving your opponents 2 1/1s.
So, that is very fair.
Yeah, so Fabled Passage or Prismatic Vista would probably be a nice include, especially since it synergizes so well with the sacrifice, the land sacrifice, and the graveyard recursion theme.
Alrighty. The last category we have here, we saved the best for last. It's basic lands. We have 19 of them. There's 8 forests, 3 islands, 3 mountains, and 5 plains. Eric, kudos to you for putting this many basic lands in a 4-color deck, because a lot of people don't run enough basic lands. That being said, I've never really been punished for not running enough basic lands, but I know people have. I've heard some Blood Moon horror stories, but yeah, it's my point is you should probably be running more basic lands, especially with this color heavy of a deck. But anyways, I don't think much else needs to be said about basic lands, so we can move on to our honorable mentions. At least that's what I call this part of the episode. So this is the part where Riley and I, in this case, are just gonna make some suggestions about cards that Eric could try in this deck.
We're just gonna tear it apart.
Yeah. We're gonna do it nicely. Yeah. We can just start right where we were with the fetch lands. I think you could run more of just the allied and enemy fetch lands, honestly, because you have a 4-color deck, so you're always going to be able to fetch something. I would also put strip mine in here. That would be so disgusting if you could play multiple lands a turn and lands from your graveyard. Oh my God, you guys remember what that was like?
Yes. It is brutal. Yeah, especially with enchanted lands. Oh man.
Yeah, you got the brunt of it, Riley, for sure.
Yeah, because I was the juicy targets. I could get a nice 3-for-1. Nice.
And I always talk about playing strip mine all the time, and I think I was just so utterly focused on things, I totally slipped my mind. So thank you. I love strip mine.
Oh yeah, it's
great
so
addition.
And it's tough in a deck like this to start putting in lands that only tap for colorless mana, but the shenanigans you could do with strip mine, you gotta go with it.
Well, if we're on the topic of lands, I've got a couple in mind for the deck as well. Flagstones of Trocaire. So flagstones is a legendary land. It taps to add white, but it also has this clause that says when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you can search your library for a plains card, put it onto the battlefield tap, then shuffle your library. So something like that synergizes really nice with either the sacrifice land theme or even something like Harrow, where you're, as an additional cost, sacrificing a land, because then all of a sudden you're not down that land, it's replacing itself, and then doing whatever else you're doing with that land.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's a plains card, so you can go get duels.
Yeah, for sure. And then another one I have is Valakut the Molten Pinnacle.
Oh,
and the reason I'm suggesting Valakut because you have Dryad of the Elysian Grove and Scapeshift. So you also have a Court of Calling, so you have a little bit of redundancy with Dryad in being able to get it out. But if you have Dryad of the Elysian Grove, it makes all of your lands into every basic land type. So all of your lands are also mountains, and then you just Scapeshift and like wreck people.
Oh,
I like it.
Yeah, that's sneaky. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Very sneaky. Super cool. I think also Nahiri's lithoforming could be a fun card in this deck with with all the ways that you can play lands from your graveyard. So we talked about it on the set review, but I'll just pull it up here. So Nahiri's lithoforming is X red for a sorcery. Sacrifice X lands for each land. Sacrifice this way, draw a card. You may play X additional lands this turn. Lands you control enter the battlefield tapped this turn. That's really the only downside. And it's a big one, but this would be more of like a fun include. And, I think this deck is more in that arena. Just from the fact that there isn't a ton of removal.
There's really like barely any interaction in this deck, and that's like the one weak point of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like between Royal Elemental, Armageddon, and the other land destruction, Catastrophe. Like that's the only form of interaction you have running.
Yep. It's more about just making a big board and having fun.
Yeah. So, I mean, on that topic, at a high level, you are running just 37 lands, and your ramp package is only 6.
Yep.
So I know you have some like graveyard loops that you can make with your lands and cards that allow you to play extra land drops, but I think beefing up the ramp package might be a good place to start, especially since the average CMC of the ramp package is 3.33. So it's kind of like, I think the ideal space, if you want to cast Omnath on turn, as soon as you can cast him, which would probably be like turn 3 if you had your ramp package focused on CMC 2.
Mm-hmm.
You might need to have a look at that just to make sure there's at least some more lower costed ramp options, or maybe even some more synergistic ramp options. Just thinking of like Migration's Path, for example, even though it gets you 2 lands, I think you could use something like even like a Roiling Regrowth, which is almost like that Harrow functional reprint, more or less. Of course, the lands don't enter in untapped. But the nice thing about Roiling Regrowth, or even something like Springbloom Druid, is that they allow you to sacrifice a land and then get 2 basic lands. So if you're interested in that sacrifice theme, later in the game, Roiling Regrowth and Springbloom give you a little bit of a mini sack outlet. And even something like Edge of Autumn, which is something that I've like always wanted to play, and I think it would be perfect in this deck.
Yeah, I run that in my Gitrog deck.
Yeah, Edge of Autumn is 1 and a green for a sorcery. It says if you control 4 or fewer lands, search your library for a basic land card, put it into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. And it also has cycling for sacrifice a land. So it's one of those things that can help you develop in the early game for 2 mana, and it also can be a little bit of a mini sack outlet / cantrip in the late game.
It's a cool card.
Yeah. Then, you've got good old Rampant Growth and Nature's Lore, just 2 CMC ramp spells. Nature's Lore is nice in a 4-color deck like this because, of course, it gets a forest, but it doesn't specify basic forest. So you could get one of your dual lands to fix your mana that way.
Yeah, and it doesn't enter tapped.
and it enters untapped, which is nice. So it's essentially like a 1 mana spell, 1 mana ramp spell, give or take.
Yeah,
And then
we can say that.
Birds of Paradise, just a classic little mana dork. I think in a 4-color deck, Birds of Paradise wouldn't be unwelcome by any means, especially since it can help you fix in a pinch. And it's just an easy early way to develop. Of course, it doesn't really match the landfall theme, but it's just such a nice card.
Yeah, very, very well designed. Like on the topic of lands, I think you could get away with running more lands in the deck because there's 37, I believe. So yeah, I think even like pumping that up to 40 or 42 could would just kind of smooth the land drops out, and getting multiple land drops. Like you do have Oracle, which lets you dig a little deeper for land drops, but like other than that, there's not a ton of digging. You do have Tatiova and Zyrus, which let you draw cards. But yeah, I think just a few more lands would do the trick.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, the lands, you're never going to be unhappy with drawing a land in this deck because there's so much synergy focused around a land entering the battlefield that, like, it's always going to be on, right?
Yeah.
So I think one of the biggest downsides with having too many lands is, of course, you flood out, but this deck would probably love to flood out.
Yeah. I have another interesting ramp card that kind of goes along with the getting lands out of the graveyard thing. It's 3 mana. It's Realms Uncharted. So it's 2 and a green for an instant. Search your library for up to 4 land cards with different names and reveal them. An opponent chooses 2 of those cards. Put the chosen cards into your graveyard and the rest in your hand. Then shuffle your library. So this is normally a downside, but you have so many ways to get the lands back out of your graveyard that it's not a big deal, and you can get any lands that you want, and it's an instant. Like this card is really amazing in a deck that can really utilize lands in the graveyard.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Like, I mean, imagine just in your pile getting a fetch land, a Field of the Dead, maybe even like a Lotus Field, or whatever. Like make your pile and have fun with it. But just having access to things like Crucible of Worlds and Ramanov Excavator and having that card, I think that sounds perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like this card a lot. I really don't get to play with it as much as I'd like to. Another card I was thinking about is Turn Timber Sower. I know we just talked about this in last week's episode, I believe, but it's 2 and a green for an 3/3 Elf Druid. Whenever 1 or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, create a 0/1 green plant creature token. Then you can pay 1, sacrifice 3 creatures, return target land card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So makes tokens, and it also recurs lands from your graveyard, and you can sack any creatures. Doesn't have to be the 0/1 plants, but there are going to be situations where you'll have the ability to play extra lands and sacrifice lands, but you won't be able to play them from your graveyard. So this is kind of a card that could come in handy if you have the token package up and running. That's going to help you with the sacrifice fodder to get the land back, and you can keep doing it if you have the mana and obviously enough tokens to do it. But this could just be like a little bit of just a little bit more redundancy for those 2 strategies in the deck.
Just to clear it goes from your graveyard to your hand, not to the battlefield.
Oh, your hand. Well, I mean that's not the worst, but it's
still. I was just clarifying.
Yeah.
But yeah, because we can play extra lands and stuff, right? So it's still good.
Yeah. No. Anyways, this was more of like would it work? But this isn't like on my short list. But it's I don't know. I kind of have a soft spot for this card.
It was actually definitely like in my deck, and I took it out when there's just too many things.
Yeah. There's a lot of big land energy happening in this deck. So
There absolutely
Um,
is.
So some synergy pieces that I was thinking about, not really ramp, but definitely fitting into the theme. Crop rotation.
Yep,
Crop rotation not only is
that I had in here.
not only is like a land tutor, it pairs really well with flagstones of Trocare, turning it into a ramp spell. And then it also just pairs with landfall and land sacrifice. It's kind of like every little bit that you want. And it would fit perfectly into that little tutor category. But another one that I thought would be perfect, because you are lacking on some interaction, but you also, in a pinch, could use it to benefit yourself. It's Path to Exile. So the reason I was suggesting Path to Exile is, in a pinch, of course you're going to use it on an opponent's creature to exile that creature, whatever problematic creature permanent that the opponent has. But you're making so many incidental tokens that you could also target one of your own tokens to get landfall trigger.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's just like a ramp spell in itself.
Yeah.
That's a cool way of looking at that.
Yeah, for sure. I have Knight of the Reliquary here. So Knight of the Reliquary is a pretty fun little creature.
Yeah.
It gets +1/+1 for each land card in your graveyard, and you can tap and sacrifice a forest or plains to search for a land card and put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. So a nice little tutor / big dumb creature in the late game. And then I've got a couple more here. Ashaya, Soul of the Wild. This is a new card from Zendikar Rising.
Mm-hmm.
3 green for a star. Its power and toughness is equal to the number of lands you control, and non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types. And I guess the reason I was thinking Ashaya is, with the creatures in your deck, you're basically turning them into lands so that they're triggering all your landfall stuff. You know, you've got things like Emiria Shepherd that is now a land entering the battlefield, so it triggers itself. And Ashaya is
pretty good.
Ashaya is fantastic when it comes to, say, facing down board wipes that say destroy all non-land permanents, or even a popular 1 in a blue spell called Cyclonic Rift that says bounce all of your opponent's non-land permanents. Well, Ashaya turns all of your non-token permanents, or your non-token creatures, I should say, into lands, so it doesn't get bounced by Cyclonic Rift.
That's super sneaky.
Cool.
Riley, you've had such a sneaky episode today.
And then the final card I have here to suggest, and I actually added it in during the episode because you guys are so snarky with your little Copperleaf Angel comment. It's it's Sylvan Safekeeper. And Sylvan Safekeeper is a classic in lands. It's a green human wizard, a 1/1, and it has an activated ability of sacrifice a land, target creature you control gains Shroud until end of turn. So that could be tutored up with Court of Calling, and it doesn't have Summoning Sickness to affect its activated ability.
You're right.
It does not.
You're right.
It was actually in the deck. My reason for getting rid of that one, I was like, I want the cards in the sacrifice section to like make value somehow, and so that's why I chose the Angel over the Safekeeper. Which may not seem like the best choice, but
well, Safekeeper is definitely a role player when it comes to protecting your board and acting as a free sacrifice outlet for your lands. So it's
being a free sacrifice outlet, that's just easier to probably activates better than being funny with the Angel.
I can respect the jank, but I just thought I'd give folks an option if they wanted to run something to fetch out with Court of Calling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's why we do it in this format.
Yeah, actually, and for any listeners that end up wanting to know, I am actually currently adding another section to the deck on Deckstats as the card suggestions. So everything that Kevin and Riley have been mentioning will be in this extra section at the end.
Nice.
Right on. Look at that, people. That's progress. You heard it happen here.
As well, I'm going to throw in another card because my other problem was I really liked the tutor package to be able to search for pretty much all of our answers. And the one card type that's not able to be searched for was instant and sorcery cards. So I think Mystical Tutor would be a really good tutor option for the deck as well, because we can get any instant or sorcery card from the deck.
Yeah, and you'll be in situations sometimes where you have all the pieces, and you need that Armageddon or whatever else you might be looking for to wrap things
Yeah,
up.
right. Like if you're in a game-ending situation, you're like, I have tokens, let's go get Overwhelming Stampede, or I have another spell, like let's get Armageddon and just end the game that way, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Or the classic Mystical Tutor for crop rotation. Just double card disadvantage.
Yeah. I do
Perfect.
have one last card on my list. It is Horn of Greed. It's 3 mana for an artifact.
Oh.
Whenever any player plays a land, that player draws a card. So again, just like Excavation or Primal Vigor, this is a symmetrical effect, but with all the lands you're going to be able to play, you're going to get so much more value off of this card than your opponents will. So it's just a nice kind of, do nothing artifact when it enters the battlefield, but the incremental value, I think, is going to really be worth it.
Yeah, notably with Horn of Greed, it does specify that you have to play the land. So it's not an actual landfall trigger.
No.
So something like Rampant Growth won't trigger your Horn of Greed. You actually have to play the land from your hand onto the battlefield, or from the graveyard onto the battlefield if you've got a Ramanop Excavator.
Yeah, and based on the way the deck is now, like that's probably what is going to be happening more often.
Yeah.
Like, when we get to late game, you have the pieces on the board and you can play from your hand or from the graveyard and you're just wheeling and dealing. But yes, it is not a landfall trigger. So those are all of my card suggestions. Riley, are you all done as well?
I'm tapped out.
Nice.
Pass priority.
Oh, yes. You're so sneaky today. I'm loving it. All right, everybody. Well, with that, we're going to bring this episode to a close. Please comment or email us and let us know what you thought of this deck. Maybe you've thought of some cards that we missed. In any case, we'd love to hear what you think. We also have a Patreon, so go and check that out if you're interested. And I'll be posting more product opening videos. I have some Zendikar sealed product I'll be opening and putting on our YouTube channel, so you can also check that out. So subscribe if you want to get alerted to that, or don't, whatever blows your hair back. But like we said at the top of this episode, you'll be able to find the link to the deck list we covered today in the show notes, as well as links to all of our deck lists on Deckstats. Thank you for listening, and thank you to our editor Ainsley, who's going to be back on the show next week. So we're looking forward to that. We'll be getting back on the lore train. You can find me on Instagram at Command Beacon, and you can find Riley on Instagram at Riley_Dayton, and on Twitter. I can't remember. Riley, where can people find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter at RilesDayton.
Perfect. Anyways, I can hear a dog barking, so thanks again, and we'll talk to you next week, everybody.
Yeah, we'll see you around.
Stay fresh.
Stanley says hi.
Oh,
Hey.
Good boy.
Turn 1 Soul Ring.
Yeah, he's a good boy. He's got to go for a bath, though. His paws are getting muddy. Oh, yeah, he likes digging. I mean, I try to get him to stop, but every once in a while he'll dig behind my back.